They said he could buy anything except peace. Malik Vaughn's world glittered like the skyline of Atlanta at midnight, all glass, gold, and ghosts. Women whispered his name like temptation itself, but tonight, something in him felt hollow. The city below reflected his soul, bright, loud, and utterly empty. Then, through the drizzle and traffic, he saw her, a florist working past midnight, barefoot in her shop, arranging blooms like she was repairing the world one petal at a time. Her gentleness felt out of place in his chaos. He told himself he was only curious, yet his pulse betrayed him. What kind of man who broke hearts for fun suddenly forgets how to breathe at the sight of innocence? What kind of woman makes a millionaire question everything he built on power and pride? The air between them felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. Malik didn't speak right away. He watched her, studied her, as if she were something fragile he might ruin just by looking too long. Eden, though nervous, didn't retreat. She offered him a soft smile, one that reached her eyes, the kind of smile that disarmed men who thought they had seen everything. He asked for flowers without saying what for. She chose white lilies, purity wrapped in silence, and handed them to him. When their fingers touched, something in him faltered. For the first time, Malik felt small in front of someone who had nothing but grace. Malik left with the flowers, but carried something heavier, a feeling that didn't fit into his world of contracts and control. Back in his car, he caught his reflection and didn't like what he saw. A man who'd learned to take, but never to feel. Outside, through the windshield, Eden moved gracefully, closing her shop, unaware she had already unsettled him more than any deal ever could. He whispered her name once, trying to sound like a secret he shouldn't have known. Eden walked home in the rain, her umbrella long forgotten, her mind still replaying the stranger's face. Something in his eyes lingered, sadness buried beneath charm. She told herself it was nothing, just a customer. But the way he looked at her, as if she was light in a world that no longer offered him warmth, stayed behind her eyes long after she locked her door. That night, Malik couldn't sleep. The city was silent except for the hum of neon and the echo of her voice. He poured another drink, but the burn no longer numbed him. In her simplicity, she'd shown him something terrifying, a glimpse of the man he could have been if he hadn't buried his heart beneath money and power. Somewhere between guilt and longing, he realized the truth. For the first time, he didn't want to win. He wanted to feel. A week passed before Malik saw her again, but in his mind, she never left. He told himself it was nothing. A moment, a flicker, yet somehow her quiet strength haunted him more than any woman ever had. So he found an excuse. He commissioned her shop to design floral installations for his company's upcoming gala. When Eden received the call, she hesitated, unsure why a man like him would remember her. But the offer was too big to refuse. That night, as she prepared sketches at her kitchen table, she whispered a silent prayer that her heart would stay safe. Little did she know, Malik wasn't looking for beauty this time. He was looking for her. Malik arrived at his company's glass headquarters the next morning, but his focus wasn't on business. Carter, his oldest friend, noticed the distraction and smirked knowingly. Malik denied it, but even his reflection in the elevator door gave him away. For a man who never let emotions mix with his empire, something had shifted. That night, he stood in his office, overlooking Atlanta, waiting for a florist whose name had somehow started to matter. Eden entered the towering building like someone stepping into another world. The marble floors echoed beneath her sneakers, the air heavy with wealth and ambition. When she reached Malik's office, her heart raced. Not from fear, but from something unspoken. He looked different in daylight, less like a myth, and more like a man. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he smiled, slow and deliberate. It wasn't charm this time, it was surrender. They worked side by side for hours, surrounded by stems, colors, and quiet tension. Malik, who was used to commanding every room, found himself following her lead, watching her hands move with care, listening to the rhythm of her calm. When she spoke about flowers, her voice softened the air itself. He realized then that she didn't just create beauty, she carried it within her. For the first time in years, he laughed without calculation, and she smiled like she'd been waiting to hear it. When the day ended, Eden gathered her things, trying to ignore the way his presence lingered long after he'd said goodbye. Malik watched her leave, fighting the urge to stop her. He knew he shouldn't feel this, not for someone so untouched by his world. But the truth was simple and cruel. For all his millions, he had never felt this kind of peace. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Malik realized he wasn't afraid of love. He was afraid of deserving it. The gala was only days away, and Malik had used every excuse to keep Eden close under the guise of final preparations. Yet, the air between them thickened, with something neither dared to name. Every shared glance lingered too long. Every silence spoke too much. Eden tried to remind herself that men like him didn't fall. They collected hearts and moved on. But Malik was changing. He watched her with quiet hunger, not for conquest, but for comfort. When she laughed, he felt warmth where there had only been walls, and when their hands brushed over the same bouquet, she pulled away. But it was too late. The story had already begun to rewrite him. That night, Eden found herself alone in the nearly finished venue, cleaning up the last of her tools. She hadn't realized Malik was still there until she felt his presence behind her. That stillness that comes before a truth you can't avoid. He asked if she ever wondered what it would be like to stop running from the things that scared her. She smiled sadly. Saying some fears are worth keeping. For a long moment, neither moved. Then he stepped closer, his voice low, his tone stripped of charm. "You're not like them," he whispered, as if confessing a secret even he didn't understand. The next day brought reality crashing back. Savannah Ross, Malik's ex-lover and business partner, returned from a trip and saw what Malik was trying not to admit. She'd known him too long, knew how easily he fell for a challenge. But this time it wasn't a game. Savannah's tone was smooth as silk when she mentioned Eden, but her eyes were cold. "Be careful," she said. "You're not the type she survives." Malik didn't answer, but his silence was confession enough. Savannah smiled the way only a woman scorned can. Slow, sharp, and certain she still had the power to ruin him. Eden felt the shift before anyone told her. The next morning, when she arrived at the venue, Malik seemed distracted, his words shorter, his smile dimmer. She didn't know about Savannah's return, only that something invisible now hung between them. Still, when he asked her to walk the garden terrace to review details, she followed. The city stretched around them, alive and golden under morning sun. For a few moments, they talked like friends, until silence took over again, and the truth began to hum beneath the air. Malik wanted to reach for her, but stopped himself. He wasn't used to wanting something that couldn't be bought. That evening, Malik sat in his car outside her shop again. He didn't go in, he just watched. Inside, she was laughing with her assistant, arranging bouquets as if the world had never hurt her. For a man who once believed love was weakness, Malik finally understood what strength looked like. A woman who still believed in softness after life had given her reasons not to. When he finally drove away, he left his reflection behind, the version of himself that couldn't love. He didn't know it yet, but the next time he saw Eden, nothing would be the same. The gala night arrived, wrapped in elegance and deceit. Malik's empire gleamed under golden chandeliers, but behind the smiles and champagne, something dark stirred. Cameras flashed, laughter echoed, and Eden's floral masterpiece transformed the hall into a dream of color and fragrance. Yet Malik couldn't focus on any of it. Savannah hovered nearby, her presence deliberate, her words sharp enough to draw blood. She whispered poison in the right ears, spreading rumors that Eden was just another one of his conquests. Malik's stomach twisted, but before he could stop her, he saw Eden across the room, radiant and unaware that the storm had already begun to turn her name into scandal. Eden felt the whispers before she heard them. Eyes followed her, glances traded like secrets. She tried to ignore it, but Savannah's laughter carried across the room. Low, knowing, cruel. Malik crossed the floor, his every step slow and deliberate, like a man fighting his own nature. When he reached Eden, she smiled politely, pretending not to notice the shift in the room's energy. "Don't listen to them," he said quietly. "They don't know you." But she saw the regret in his eyes, the guilt of someone who knew exactly how such rumors were born. For the first time, she wondered if she'd been foolish to believe he was different. By the time Eden stepped outside, the cool night air stung like truth. She couldn't breathe inside that room any longer, not with so many stares and half-smiles cutting at her back. Malik followed, calling her name, but she didn't turn. When he caught up, he tried to explain, but words failed. He wanted to tell her she wasn't a rumor, she was a revelation. But all that came out was silence. She shook her head, tears glimmering in her eyes, saying softly, "You can't fix what people think when you're the one who taught them how to judge." Then she walked away, leaving him in the cold, a man used to power but powerless, to stop the one person who saw his soul from walking out of it. The next morning, Eden didn't open her shop. She stayed in bed, phone buzzing with messages she refused to read. Her heart wasn't broken, not yet, but bruised in a way that felt worse. Malik had tried to call, but she ignored him. She'd lived long enough to know when something beautiful was built on borrowed time. Across town, Malik sat in his office, staring at the same skyline that once made him feel invincible. Now it mocked him. He thought of the way Eden looked at him before she walked away, not with anger, but with quiet disappointment. That was what shattered him most. Days turned into weeks. The tabloids had their story. Malik Vaughn, the heartbreaker, caught again. This time with a small-town florist who'd fallen for his charm. But the truth was quieter, sadder. Malik didn't fight the rumors, didn't chase her. He let the world say what it wanted because, for once, he was too tired to play the role they'd written for him. But every night, when he looked at the empty space beside him, he remembered her laugh, her steady hands, the way she saw him like he was worth saving. That was his punishment. Not losing her, but realizing he'd finally found something real. Only to ruin it without trying. Malik's empire began to crack like glass under too much pressure. Deals that once came easily now fell through. Investors whispered about instability. Savannah saw the chaos and didn't hide her satisfaction. "You built this kingdom on charm," she told him, "and now it's turning on you." But Malik no longer cared about power. Every boardroom victory felt hollow without the calm of Eden's voice grounding him. The tabloids still ran her picture beside his name, twisting their story into something ugly, but Malik didn't fight it. He knew the truth. He had broken his own peace the night he let her walk away. For the first time, he wasn't chasing success. He was facing himself. Across the city, Eden returned to her small world. Her flower shop, her routines, her silence. She poured herself into her work, arranging blooms as if mending her own spirit. But no matter how much she tried, memories of Malik lingered between petals. She told herself he was part of a different life, one she'd been lucky to escape. Still, when she saw his face on a magazine cover, tired and alone, something inside her ached. She hated that she still cared. Love, she realized, wasn't always about staying. Sometimes it was about walking away and hoping they'd find the strength to change without you. Savannah wasn't finished. If she couldn't have Malik, She'd make sure no one else could. Leaked documents, false headlines, whispered scandals. She orchestrated them all. Within weeks, Malik's company was under investigation, his reputation hanging by a thread. Carter urged him to fight back, but Malik barely responded. The empire he'd built on arrogance was now sinking under the weight of his silence. Alone in his penthouse, he finally saw what Eden must have seen long before, that all the wealth in the world couldn't fill the emptiness inside a man who never learned to love honestly. Eden found out about the scandal days later when a customer mentioned it offhandedly. Her chest tightened, but she said nothing. Later, she sat in her shop after closing, scrolling through the headlines. Malik's company under investigation, investors pulling out, betrayal within his circle. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. The man who once seemed untouchable was finally breaking, not from greed, but from guilt. A part of her wanted to reach out, but another part whispered caution. She'd already given too much of her heart to someone who didn't know how to protect it. So she closed her laptop, blew out the candle beside her, and whispered a prayer, not for him to come back, but for him to heal. Malik's world collapsed quietly. Savannah's schemes came to light, but by then his company's name was already tainted. Carter stayed by his side, but Malik's fight was gone. He didn't try to rebuild, not yet. Instead, he spent his days driving through the city, seeing corners that reminded him of her. The flower shop, the terrace, the rain-soaked street where she'd walked away. Somewhere between the noise of the world and the silence of regret, Malik found something new. Humility. For the first time, he didn't crave power or praise. He craved peace. And for a man like him, that was the beginning of redemption. Malik had reached the edge of himself. The empire was gone, the headlines had faded, and what remained was silence. The kind that forces a man to listen to what's been buried too long. He started spending mornings walking the Beltline, watching people live ordinary lives, wondering how peace had always escaped him. One morning, he stopped by a flower stand, not hers, but close enough to her. The scent of lilies brought her back instantly. A young vendor asked if he wanted to buy some, and Malik smiled faintly, nodding. "For who?" she asked. He paused, then answered softly, "For the person I hurt the most." It wasn't an apology yet, but it was a start. Carter found him there one afternoon, sitting on a park bench instead of a boardroom chair. He didn't scold or question, just sat beside him in silence. After a long pause, Malik spoke. "I built everything so no one could ever leave me again. And I lost it all because I never learned how to stay." Carter nodded, his expression heavy with empathy. "Maybe losing everything was the only way you'd find what mattered." For the first time in months, Malik laughed. Not out of humor, but release. The man who had lived on control was finally learning surrender. When Savannah's downfall came, it wasn't loud. It was poetic. The same people she'd used turned on her when the truth surfaced. Malik could have ruined her publicly, but he didn't. Instead, he met her one last time in the office they once shared. "You win by letting go," he said simply. Savannah looked at him, searching for the arrogance she used to despise, but it was gone. For the first time, she saw the man beneath the myth. "She changed you," she said, almost in disbelief. "No," he replied. "She reminded me I could change myself." Savannah smiled faintly, tears threatening her composure. "Then maybe I did something right after all." Eden didn't know about Malik's transformation. All she knew was that peace had slowly returned to her life, fragile but real. One afternoon, while watering plants outside her shop, she noticed a delivery van pull up. A man stepped out and handed her a box. Inside were white lilies and a handwritten note. "I don't want forgiveness. I just want you to know I finally see myself the way you did." Her hands trembled as she read it. The writing was familiar, strong yet uncertain. She pressed the note to her chest, tears forming. She didn't know if she was ready to see him again, but for the first time, she wanted to. Malik stood outside her shop that evening, unsure whether to go in. Through the glass, he saw her arranging flowers, the same way she had the night he first saw her. Barefoot, calm, radiant in simplicity. He realized then that love wasn't about possession. It was about peace, patience, and the courage to face your reflection. He didn't knock. Instead, he placed a single lily on the doorstep and walked away, smiling for the first time without pretending. Inside, Eden noticed the flower, her heart racing as she looked outside to find the street empty, except for the soft echo of footsteps fading into dusk. Months passed. The city changed seasons. Winter thawed into spring. And with it, the ache between Malik and Eden softened into memory. Malik rebuilt, not the empire, but himself. He opened a small community development firm, using his wealth to restore neighborhoods he once overlooked. He didn't look for her, not because he didn't want to, but because he finally respected her peace. Yet, destiny has its own rhythm. One Sunday morning, while visiting a local farmer's market, he caught sight of familiar curls. Sunlight glinting on skin he thought he'd never see again. Eden was there, laughing with a vendor surrounded by flowers. For a moment he froze. Then quietly, he smiled. Their eyes met across the crowd, and everything slowed. Eden's breath caught, as if her body remembered what her heart had tried to forget. Malik didn't move at first. He waited, giving her the choice he'd never offered before. When she finally smiled, small, unsure, but real, he walked toward her. No grand speeches, no apologies rehearsed in mirrors. Just two people standing in a moment that felt like grace. "You look happy," he said quietly. "I am," she replied. "You look different," he laughed softly. "I had to lose everything to find something real." They sat together on a bench nearby, the air filled with music from a street performer and the scent of blooming magnolias. Malik spoke of the months between, how he'd learned to slow down, to build rather than own. Eden listened, quiet, her heart softening with each word. When he admitted that the hardest thing he'd ever done was let her go, she smiled gently. "Sometimes love is what happens when you finally stop running from yourself." He nodded, eyes glistening. It wasn't a confession of love. It was a recognition that what they shared didn't need to be perfect, only real. When it was time to leave, Malik stood, unsure what came next. "I won't ask for another chance," he said softly. "I just wanted you to know I'm grateful for everything." Eden looked up at him, eyes reflecting the sun. "Maybe you don't have to ask," she said. "Maybe this is the second chance. Just living better." For the first time, they didn't need promises. Love didn't demand. It existed quietly, between two people who had finally learned to listen. As they walked side by side through the market, Malik reached for a single lily from her stall. Eden handed it to him without a word, and the silence said everything. That evening, Malik stood on his balcony, city lights shimmering below. For the first time, he wasn't haunted by what he'd lost. The air felt lighter, the silence kinder. Somewhere across town, Eden watered her flowers, her heart no longer burdened by old pain. Two souls that had collided, broken, and rebuilt, now at peace. Not because they found forever, but because they found themselves. Malik smiled as the night breeze brushed his face. He whispered into the quiet, not for her to hear, but for himself. "She made me break my heart, so I could learn how to use it."